Okay, we're going to do an introductory activity this morning called Bumpty Bump Bump. We're going to divide into two groups, and before we divide up, I'm going to let Sandy explain to you how we play Bumpty Bump Bump. And Bob, you should be getting this, I hope.
And just so you know, this is in the list of activities that you're going to get today. However, the one in the book is a slightly different, use slightly different words than the words that I use. So you'll get the idea, and you'll make the transition, I'm sure. So basically, we'll be standing in a circle, and everybody's in a circle. One person is in the center, and the person in the center will approach one person, and then I'm going to say one of four things to her. I'm either going to say left, right, front, or center. And after I say that, so for example, if I chose to say left, I would say left, bumpity bump bump bump.
Simran.
And by the time, so by the time I get done saying bumpity bump bump bump, she has to have said the name of the person that's either to the left, to the right, to the front, or center is herself. Okay. So front is me, because I'm in front of her, and then the left to right. Okay. So we go around, and so
But you don't,
she said Simran.
You don't say me, right? You say your own name. Is that right?
You have to say your own name. The kids always want to say me when it's them. And it's like, no, you have to say your name. Okay. So if I came to Karen, and let's say Usha is on this side of her, and I said, front.
Sandy.
Oh, she's good, but I didn't say bumpity bump bump bump. And if I didn't have my coffee this morning. I don't drink coffee. I'll use that for an excuse. So you go around the circle, and I always give the kids one mess up in the beginning, because it's really hard to do, actually. You have to really be thinking and concentrating. And so if the first one they get it wrong, that's their freebie. And then they get to try it again, because it takes a little warming up practice. And if you don't say the name before the person in the middle says bumpity bump bump bump, then you trade places. You are then in the middle, and you get to work your way around the circle.
You'll catch on really quickly.
Yeah, we'll do it together.
Now I'm going to divide you into groups, and I would like for all of those who came from away from Portland, who live out of Portland this morning, to raise your hands, please. Okay, I would like for Marcia, Glenda, Tarina, and Mary to be part of the preschool group. The rest of you are the group who stays in here. Now all the Portland people, please raise your hands. Okay, I'd like for Vidura, Melissa, Helen, and Rose to stay in here, and the rest of you to go to the preschool room. Sandy will escort you to the preschool room and start you off in there, and Karen will lead the group in here, and we'll be in the back so that Bob can film it.
Right, bumpity bump bump bump.
Oh, sorry.
But you get a freebie, so. It was correct, but she had to say it before I finished saying bumpity bump.
Oh my
bump.
God.
She's fast.
Everybody's changing their names all the time.
I know, you just, okay. Right,
Freedom.
bumpity bump. See, you got it. Okay, all right. Center, bumpity bump bump bump. You're Rose. You get a freebie. I'm in front of her.
Yes, she's
So
center.
center is yourself.
Oh, God. Center is your
See, so we learn a lot just by running through one. Left, bumpity bump bump bump. All right. Okay. Front, bumpity bump bump bump. So I'm front.
Oh, I thought it was center. Oh, okay.
No, the center is yourself.
Okay, sorry, Karen.
Not that we're yourself centered, but you know, you get the.
Okay, say bumpity bump 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 faster so somebody else is in the middle.
Okay. Well, I want to give them a chance. So. Front, bumpity bump bump bump. I'm looking at these guys.
Oh, boy. Okay,
So you just have to say.
right, bumpity bump bump bump.
Freedom.
No, not quite.
No way.
Come on, be a sport.
So it's his right that he...
Right, no, but he just was a little slow. You finished saying that.
I'm confused.
You have to say their name before a person finishes saying.
Oh, I forgot to say bumpy. Left, bumpy bump bump bump.
Okay, you trade with her.
Left, bumpity bump bump bump. Right, bumpity bump.
Helen.
Center, bumpity bump bump. It's Annie, Priya.
Which name?
Okay, left, bumpity bump bump bump. Redora.
It was too late.
God,
It was correct, but too late.
Impossible. Right, bumpity bump bump bump.
My brain said it is a lovely experience.
Center, bumpity bump bump bump. Johnny.
Too late, though. Correct, but too late.
Left, bumpity.
Okay.
It's possible.
Center, bumpity bump. They're gonna get faster.
Helen, would you go get the other group?
Okay. Right, bumpity bump bump.
Nobody. She left, not fair. Okay. Center bumpity bump.
Me. Left, bumpity bump bump bump. I'll take that. Center, bumpity bump bump bump.
Right, bumpity bump bump bump.
You guys are all such good sports. Simran.
Left, bumpity bump bump bump.
Welcome to this is actually, I believe, the 6th class in Education for Life series. 2 of those were personal development weekends, and then this is the 4th of the Education for Life weekends. So the first weekend we had the essence of Education for Life, and the second weekend we had motivating children, or specific gravity, or progressive development, as you prefer to call it. The third weekend we had tools and stages of development. And today we're talking about energy. The flow of energy is the name of this class. And of course, you've heard me talking about energy, I think, in every single one of the classes, partly because it's a favorite topic of mine, partly because it's one of the most basic principles of Education for Life. And it's also a topic and a concept that's coming to the fore in society in general. In 1999, Time Magazine, you know they have a Man of the Year, or Person of the Year it is now, every year, right? And does anybody remember in 1999 they did the Person of the Century? Anybody remember that? And who do you think they chose? Albert Einstein. And why? This is from that article. Why, finally, is he so important to the age? Not because he personified brain power, not because he was an Einstein, but rather because he demonstrated that the imagination is capable of coming to terms with experience. Simply by gazing into existence, he concluded that time and space could be warped, that mass and energy were interchangeable. Mass and energy are interchangeable. Well, as I've said before, the ancient yogis and rishis taught and that consciousness was first. Consciousness gives rise to energy, and energy gives rise to physical form. So you think about in your own everyday life, you decide to send someone a birthday card, there's the thought. And then you put some energy into it, and you either make a card or you go to the store and you buy one, and then you have a physical form. And what we're going to be talking about today is seeing the class, your classrooms, if you're at home, seeing your home, if you're a parent, seeing the children as a group, and each individual child as an energy field. Not just a physical form with this behavior and this personality trait and that personality trait, but a constantly flowing, malleable energy form. And we know this is true We know we are energy forms. We're so little mass that, I think I already mentioned this in a different class, that as you sit on that chair, you think you are touching the chair, but actually nothing physical is touching the chair. It's just an energy field that is on the energy field of the chair. That the actual physical particles are so tiny that they're not touching. It's impossible for them to touch. Well, it's a different way of looking at things, isn't it? And we're going to be looking at things in a different way. But already, things are different all around us from how they used to be. For example, kids today, they take for granted the instant access to information through energy, don't they? It's just all right there for them. There was a young boy who was studying the Vietnam War, and his father thought he wasn't taking it very seriously, and said, I know he's not really serious about this. And mother said, oh, he's been studying. She called to him in the next room and she said, who's Henry Kissinger? And he goes, I don't know, why? Is he on our caller ID? So this is Pickles, the comic strip Pickles. And we have Grandpa, crotchety old Grandpa, talking to his grandson. And he says, still bored, huh? The little boy says, yeah, Grandpa. You know, when I was your age, I could entertain myself all day with nothing but a stick. Little boy, they had sticks when you were a kid? Of course they did. Well, how much memory did they have? Less than a gigabyte, I bet. Thanks for indulging me there. So those of you who did the assignment, how many of you got to read Calm and Compassionate Children before you came today? How many of you have been able to do that? You know some of the things that are in that book about working with energy and changing the energy. Anybody have one that you particularly recall or that you enjoy using or that was new to you? Anything at all? Beth?
I think music.
Music.
Good one. I mean, it's not necessarily just singing it, but to be listening to it. So I know at times if I'm driving and I'm in, rush hour, I know it's probably best to have something calm, but I tend to like something a bit more upbeat and higher. It probably isn't helping my aggravation sitting in traffic, but it's what I tend to enjoy. And then sometimes in the mornings I listen to calmer music at home, and it tends to get me ready for the day and slowly ease into things.
Did you notice the music I had on after Bumpity Bump Bump? Because Bumpity Bump Bump's a little stimulating, isn't it? You're all giggling, and so I put on some calming music. As far as the upbeat music when you're driving, I don't know about you, but if I've been teaching all day, I need upbeat to stay awake until I get home and can take a nap maybe. Anything else that you can work with energy using? Selene, that's one of your favorites here, Taking them out in nature, right? Nature really affects children's energy. Just opening the door and taking the kids outside will affect things in one way or another. Nature can affect energy in the classroom or in your home without even going outside. When it starts to snow, what happens? Any of you ever been in a classroom of kids when it starts to snow?
Oh, yeah.
The energy gets like this, doesn't it? It gets very excited and in a thrilling way, not agitated, but just excited. It's so great. This is in our part of the country. I'm sure in some parts of the country, it doesn't have that effect at all. So using energy with children we could just tell you countless story after story after story. And a lot of times, we just do things, and then after the fact, we look back on it and see how that was an energetic thing. So I'll give you an example of this. Karen used to have a student who had a lot of problems with attention, a lot of problems with self-esteem and low self-esteem, and therefore when anything was challenging, it was just, I can't do it, and tears, and just a lot of problems with staying with the program in school. And it was exacerbated by family problems and not enough time to send the right food and many things going on. So she worked with she and Sonali both. Sonali joined the class later when he was part of the class, and they really worked with it well. Nevertheless, there got to be times where they would call me up and say, I'm sending so-and-so over to the office. I'm going to call him Robert. It's not his name. I'm sending Robert over to the office. And in the early days, I would try to talk to him. And then as time went on, one day he came to the office, and I thought, you know, they always say, if you start to say, what did you do? Well, somebody else did something, not me, right? So I said, you know, I could just see this dark little energy cloud all around him. And I said, well, I was getting ready to go to the library. Walk with me. So he had no choice. So we walked out the door, and we were walking across the parking lot. And before we got to the street through the parking lot, he said, totally spontaneously, we were not talking. He said, I hit Jamie. I said, you did? He said, yeah, I hit him because he called me a blah, 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 blah. And it was just so amazing. And I just thought, whoa, you know, I could have spent 20 minutes talking to him and never have gotten to this point. But what happened? We moved. We got the energy moving through physical, actually this time, actual physical movement. And once his energy got moving, he started processing. And instead of being defensive, he started sharing with me what the problem was. So this is the kind of thing that we can do as teachers and parents. In that case, I have to admit, I wasn't doing it consciously. Another time I did. We had a little boy who would, they're not always boys, but this happens to be, who had he would have sort of temper tantrum, meltdown types of things. And he came in the office one day, and I could see, boy, and we don't have kids come to the office that much. I'm just telling these stories to give you examples of how you can work with energy. And I could see that he was having what it would be known in Ayurvedic medicine. He was having a pitta meltdown. His whole body was flushed. He was red. He was crying. But I could see it was anger and frustration. And I went to the refrigerator and got our cold pack that we use when kids get hurt. And I asked permission, may I put this on your neck? I put that on his neck, and pretty soon he was calming down. And it worked so beautifully that then I gave him a popsicle. We happened to have some popsicles, some those icy type things in the refrigerator, and fruit juice popsicle. And that might not have been the best thing to do because I was rewarding bad behavior. But on the other hand, I felt he really needed it to get back into himself. He was so overheated and so agitated. And after we came back to that center, then we could talk about what happened and what different choices he could make next time. Those of you who've gotten to this chapter in Calm and Compassionate Children recall the story of the first time I ever consciously used music to help control, it's not the correct word, direct energy, was one time when I had a 5th and 6th grade class who had played outside at recess, and I hadn't been on duty that recess. And when they came back in, they were all agitated and all trying to tell me. I mean, they were all gathered around me, indignant. You know how they get when something's not fair. And it wasn't fair that the 3rd grade class monopolized the rope swing. And they were so agitated. And I said, before we talk about this, you need to all get a drink of water and sit down. We're going to have 60 seconds of silence, and then we'll talk about it. Because we'd practiced silence in the classroom, they knew how to do that. They had the control to do that. And while they were getting their water, I went and I put on a calming piece of music. I started playing it, sat down, let the 60 seconds go by. And they were actually grateful for the time. I don't mean they thanked me, but you could see them starting to breathe and calm down. And then I said, so we had this beautiful about 60 beat per minute music going. And I said, okay, now what happened? And a couple of people related the story and said, okay, so who is upset that we need to resolve this? And only 2 hands went up. And I was able to let the rest of the class go on with their lesson and take those 2 people into the conference room and resolve it. And if we had tried to resolve it right then through words, it would have been an endless blame game. Even if you use the techniques of nonviolent communication, which I'm all for, I still say if you work with energy first, those techniques work even better. First of all, change the energy. You can't solve a problem in the state that it was created in. You have to go to a different consciousness before you can solve a problem. So right now, I'm hoping that Sandy would pass out the handouts because on the top there is, I hope, an optical illusion. great, that I want you all to look at. So when you get this, if you've seen it before, please, I'm just treating you like my classroom of 5th and 6th grade, right? 7th, 8th, 9th. Don't blurt out, oh, that's a blah and a blah. Let everyone have a chance to discover. If you've seen it before, don't show it to anyone. Let people look at it for a little bit. The top sheet should be an optical illusion. See if you see two things in it. I know you know it. May I borrow yours? Mm-hmm. We'll borrow this so Bob can get a read on it. So, how many of you see an old woman? Good. How many of you see a young girl? Now, does anybody need help seeing both of them? The old woman, this is her nose right here. And this is her mouth right here. But if it's a young girl, this mouth becomes a necklace, and this becomes her eyelash, and she's looking in the other direction. Does everybody see both? Okay, ask a neighbor to show you if you don't see both. Now, this is a very common optical illusion. You see it in a lot of books. But the point is, when you're looking at it, can you see both simultaneously? You kind of have to switch your eyes a little bit to see one then the other, one then the other. And sometimes the first time you look at it, it takes a moment, doesn't it? You know something else is there, but you can't quite see it. Do you have that experience? Mm-hmm. Well, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I'm talking about an all-new paradigm of looking at what's happening with your kids, what's happening in life. It works not only with kids, it works with adults. If you're an administrator, it works with your staff. If you're a parent, it works with your family. When you start seeing things in terms of energy and patterns of energy, it's like all of a sudden you've discovered a whole new world. Like if you saw the old woman first, suddenly there's a young girl. And it was there all the time. You just weren't looking at it. It's there all the time. It's been there all the time. But if you start looking at it and playing with it, you'll discover, as I said, it's this whole new alternate world and way of living that you might not have thought about before. And as I say, all good teachers, all people who are in tune with people and work well with people, intuitively do a lot of this. But maybe don't speak about it in terms of energy. Now, in this class, we've already talked about levels of energy. That was class number 2, specific gravity. You remember the 3 levels of energy? The highest level, which is expansive and thinking of others and able to include others and uplifting, was called light. And that was high energy. It takes a lot of energy to be that way. And then the lowest energy of not wanting to do anything, of not being able to direct your energy or get going, was heavy. And then that stage between the two was ego active. So that was levels or amount of energy. And then in the class after that, we talked about tools and stages. And in a way, that's a quality of energy. Energy flows through us as human beings in many ways. But 4 basic ways are through the body. Through feeling, through will, and through intellect. And by the way, yesterday I watched the video of the last class and I misstated something, so let me correct that in this class if I may. I talked about stages of maturity in the Education for Life system, being the first 6 years are body, the next 6 feeling, and then the next 6 will. And I compared that to Waldorf. And what I said was wrong. I said Waldorf was the same, but they go to intellect, I'm pretty sure. I think the only people I know that consider a will stage starting at age 12 are Josette and Sambala Lovemore, who wrote a book that's going to be on the bibliography I give you today. But other than that, I don't know of any education systems or methodologies that speak of the will years before going to the intellect. So I wanted to correct that error that I made. So I was talking about levels of energy and qualities of energy, and that all is energy. I heard, this is so timely, you know how it is when you learn a new vocabulary word, you hear it everywhere? Well, in getting ready for this class, I was listening to NPR this past week, and I heard this interview with many people in the emergency room of George Washington University Hospital. And the story was on a harpist who would come there to play in the emergency room. Now, not in the waiting room, but in the emergency room where the people are actually being worked on. And her name is Joy Grossman, and she's actually paid by the hospital to work in the emergency room. And she said when they interviewed, "I'm secretly there for the nurses and doctors more than the teachers." I mean, more than the patients, excuse me, more than the patients. And then she said, "I'm a kindergarten teacher." That's her other paid job. And she said, quote, "My ear is very trained to listen for states of energy in a room. I'm thinking about how to calm energy down. I also listen for how to slow people down and slow the atmosphere in the room." And I thought, okay, here's an Education for Life teacher right there. She's probably never heard of Education for Life, but she's doing it. She's in tune with it. When we speak of energy, I think I've mentioned this in another class, but I just wanted to mention it again. Some people are like, well, exactly what does she mean by energy? I see energy, does she mean heat? Because heat's a form of energy, right? And it is a form of energy. Does she mean electrical energy? What does she mean by energy? And some other words that mean a similar thing that we could interchange for that are vibration, intention, atmosphere. A good way to think of it when you're working with kids is, what's the energy behind this? Instead of listening so much to the words people say, feel what's the energy behind the words, because kids often will say what you want to hear. You know, did you do your homework? May I have it? Adults do it too, don't they? How are you this morning? I'm fine. I don't know. And when you start tuning into the energy behind what people are saying, you can relate to them from your center to their center. You can't do it unless you get into your center, because if you're off in your emotions, how can you possibly expand enough to feel what they're feeling? I remember that one time in a junior high class that I didn't teach, but someone in Education for Life did teach, and she had a list of words that she didn't allow in the classroom. Now, if you remember, one of the chapters in my book, Calm and Compassionate Children, is high-mindedness. And that's one way to uplift energy, is to direct the attention toward uplifting things. You know, when you come in the morning and you say, "Whoa, look at the way the sunshine's hitting so-and-so's hair. You can see all the red highlights." And when you get kids to start noticing uplifting things rather than the down things, you know, and of course there's going to be plenty of that other type. Lorna's having a problem right now in her classroom with someone who, and this is so typical for a certain age, that bathroom humor and anything to the bathroom is, you know, you've got to talk about it. And it doesn't bring the energy, it doesn't produce a receptive learning atmosphere, let's say that. It produces agitation. But high-mindedness, keeping the mind up on uplifted things, does produce a relaxed learning situation. So I know where I was going with this. So she had some words that she didn't allow in the classroom, and some of them were words that had to do with bathroom humor, and of course a few others. And one day at school, a kid said, "I feel like I'm going to puke." And so after school, these two girls were discussing this, that so-and-so was sick today. And one girl said, "Well, he used one of those words that we're not allowed to use." And the other girl said, "Well, wait a minute, but he didn't use it to be gross. He used it because he literally was sick. So I think that's different." And I think personally that if kids can get this, we can get this. I love to tell the story about that I overheard Sandy Goodwin one time when a little boy came in from recess all indignant because someone did such and such. It was the classic, the energy was, you know. And what Sandy said is, "Now, what is our rule about telling the teacher about what other people are doing? And he goes, okay, if it's keeping someone safe, I should tell you. If it's trying to get them in trouble, I shouldn't. Oh, okay. And he turned around and walked out the door. And this is what we're talking about. Tuning into the intention behind things is another way to look at energy. I wanted to just share with you a couple of other quotations about energy that I particularly loved, if I find them real easily. Here's another Einstein one. Matter is nothing but energy vibrating in a frequency low enough that we can perceive it with the senses. And this is from Rabbi, I can't really pronounce his name, but he's known as Reb Zalman. He's the founder of the Jewish Renewal Movement. And when asked, what does the word God mean to you? Here's his answer. The source of all life is a constant, unending flow of energy that animates all of life. The terms verb and process best describe this reality. God's energy flows everywhere. We cannot control this energy. All we can do is recognize it and get in step with it so that our very existence is in harmony with what is rather than at cross purposes with it. So I thought that was just lovely for a spiritual leader to define God in that way as a flow of energy. Other words that we can use to describe energy, and this will give you another idea of what we're talking about. Energy can be calm or frenetic, purposeful or aimless and restless, serene or agitated, friendly or angry, expansive or contractive, interested or indifferent, inclusive or exclusive. And as I'm reading these, do you think of times you've seen the kids in one or the other, either your own children or the classroom? It can be thoughtful or careless, sincere or sarcastic, upbeat or depressed, intentional or instinctual, generous or selfish, harmonious or argumentative, kind or mean-spirited, creative or unimaginative or even destructive, light or heavy, safe or threatening, rhythmic or incoherent. And it can be value-neutral words such as physical or mental. These first ones, there were sort of values to each side, right? But these are value-neutral, physical or mental. It can be reserved or outgoing. It can be joking or serious. It can be inward or it can be outward. So these are things you're looking for and trying to pick up on. You know, there was I've heard this story many times that there was a Chinese emperor who would travel from one, state or zone or whatever of the empire to the next. And rather than looking at the books and seeing the financial accounting and interviewing the governor when he got there, what he would do was he'd ask to have the court musicians come in and play the music, because he said he could tell from that if things were doing well in that area or not. And of course, that music is nothing but vibration, because he believed vibration reflects the consciousness. And I know that as the principal of the school, that's what when I walk through the classroom, I'm not so interested in, I do look to see, well, what activity are the kids doing and what are they working on, and is it multiplication, and are they doing group work or peer work or work alone? I look at all those things, but the main thing that tells me whether or not things are going well in that classroom is the energy. And by that, I mean all those adjectives I just described. If kids are engaged, not excited, not bored, not indifferent, they might be noisy, they might be quiet, they might be doing an activity in a large group, they might be doing an activity alone, they might be painting and creating, they might be doing multiplication tables. It doesn't matter. What matters is, what's the energy like? And here's the wonderful thing, everybody. When you get the energy right, it all just flows. There's just a wonderful flow that happens, and all things are possible. Because why? We're made to grow. We're made to evolve. The brain is made to learn. But it can only learn in certain states. It can learn in what's called, this is what Kane and Kane, let me be sure I give you this correctly. Renata and Jeffrey Kane, in their book, Making Connections, Teaching in the Human Brain, called Relaxed Alertness, is vital for learning to take place. And relaxed alertness includes both security and challenge. The kids both have to feel safe and challenged. And when we say safe, we mean, yeah, they know somebody's not going to try to push drugs on them or throw a spitball at them but we also mean nobody's going to make fun of them. They're not going to be put down and embarrassed if they don't know the answer. They know if they try something new and they get it wrong, it's going to be treated as part of the learning process, not a grievous error that shows how dumb I am. And all of those things are so important, and you all know that because you're all heart-oriented people. So you would never have, a classroom or a home who did those things. But when we consciously create that sort of safety and then the right challenge, we consciously create a state of attentiveness. And how do we get to that state of attentiveness is called flow learning. And in a few minutes we're going to talk about flow learning. But first let's talk about what happens when the energy just gets stuck. Did Karen already tell you the story of her student who got stuck on handwriting? He absolutely refused to do handwriting. Do you all remember that story? And Tarina wasn't here, so he just would not do his handwriting, could not do it. Was like pulling teeth. She would cajole, she would persuade. And then one day she thought, okay, wait a minute. Now, I can offer a reward to help a child get their energy started. You know, it's not the thing we want to do all the time. We don't want to make kids reward dependent. But I could offer a reward, and he is a feeling child. So here she's using information from class 2 on specific gravity, what's his level of energy. Then she's using it from class 3 on tools of maturity. He's a feeling child, and he loves to be touched. And she said, okay, if you do just this first line of letters here, I'll come over and I'll write the letters on your back. He loved to have the letters written on his back. And whoa, he sat down and whipped through those letters. And all of a sudden, what had been like this in the class, well, I mean, I don't mean she's literally. This isn't literal. I'm depicting energy, right? You know, do it. No, I'm not going to do it. Please do it. I don't want to, you know.
Doing it wrong.
Yeah. All of a sudden, it became this flow of energy where they're in cooperation. Because from her center, she felt, what's inside him? What's he feeling? How can I help him make that next step? And sometimes the energy does get stuck for thousands of different reasons. You know, like if the room is overheated, if it's after lunch. I remember if it's at the end of the day. Do you all remember, I think it was the very last handwriting class we had, so it's about 4:45 in the afternoon. You all have been here since 8:30 in the morning. And Karen was giving a wonderful handwriting class. Everybody's into it, but the room faced west, and we had the heat on because it was cold out, but then we all filled it up, and nobody turned the heat down. The sun was streaming in, heating it up more. And Karen noticed that everybody was looking sleepy. And I was in the back of the room, so I didn't know that. I just know that she said, okay, everybody, stand up. And we all stood up, and she said, okay, we're going to write our Fs with our arms. Everybody hold your arm out and do a cursive F. And she had us doing all that, and I just thought it was part of her lesson plan. Later, she told me, everybody was going to sleep. I must have been boring them to tears. I said, no, I don't think you were boring them to tears. It was 4:45 in the afternoon, and the energy was going. We're not heavy people, but the energy was getting heavy, wasn't it? And so what's the answer when the energy gets heavy? Move. Action is the answer. And how many of you have ever had something happen in your class where it was like that and you realized nothing's happening? They're not hearing a word I'm saying. Has that ever happened?